We are now close to 4.5 years into the current generation of video game consoles, and already we're hearing a lot of buzz surrounding what comes next. Rumors surrounding PlayStation 5 in particular have been spreading far and wide, thanks to an article by website Semi-Accurate, which talked about how, according to their sources, the console will use AMD's Navi as its base architecture, that its CPU will be a custom Zen, and that a large amount of dev kits has been sent out already. Enough that the editor assumed that a 2018 release is not out of the question. Now, as if the website's name Semi-Accurate wasn't ominous enough, it is worth noting that this article was paywalled behind a ridiculous $1,000 subscription. So yeah, a somewhat suspect news outlet to say the least. But it did generate enough attention to catch the eye of Kotaku editor Jason Schreier, best known for his thorough investigative articles on the development history of various troubled games and studios like Mass Effect Andromeda, Destiny, and Visceral Games. Most recently, he decided to look into the latest PlayStation 5 rumors and test their accuracy, conferring with a number of his game industry sources to that end, and here's what he found. Of the dozens of sources he spoke to, only 2 of them knew tangible information about the console, and agreed on one thing: the next PlayStation is unlikely to release in 2019, let alone 2018. Personally speaking, I don't think it takes an industry insider to know that. The notion that Sony would cut PS4's ongoing success short by releasing a next iteration already, it makes no business sense. The 2 sources did note, however, that plans are always shifting at this stage, with one of them stating, quote, "On a multi-year project, a lot can happen to shift schedules both forward and backward. At some point, Sony's probably looked at every possible date. It's all about what they think is the best sweet spot in terms of hardware." Kotaku then notes how a surprise move by Microsoft or another competitor, for example, could trigger a change in plans. But the general sentiment from insiders seems to be that 2018 and even 2019 are unlikely release windows for PlayStation 5. The console is unlikely to release until at least 2020. Further solidifying this notion is the fact that when Jason spoke to other developers, both first and third-party studios, he learned that nobody had heard anything about the console. If the PS5 were indeed set to launch sometime in 2018, then developers would have already heard about it by now, had dev kits in their hands, or at least have some information. But the fact that even Sony's first-party studios haven't seen or heard anything about it goes to show that the next iteration of PlayStation is still ways off. Not to mention that according to one source familiar with Sony's plans, for PlayStation 5 to be out this fall, the console would have already started manufacturing, of which there are no signs of. Kotaku's article also addressed Semi-Accurate's claim that dev kits were already out and about, with enough distributed to theorize that the console might be out by the end of the year. Dev kits, for those who don't know, are essentially prototype versions of consoles that are sent out to game developers to give them a sense of the hardware specs they'll be dealing with and to allow them to get a head start in familiarizing themselves with an upcoming system and eventually making games for it. They often tend to be rudimentary boxes with hardware haphazardly thrown together. It's all function over style and about providing developers the proper access, license, and development environment. One of Kotaku's sources noted that super early dev kits are often just PCs with custom or existing components like CPUs, GPUs, and motherboards, and may not resemble the final product at all. They also said that in the early dev kit stages, 1 or 2 of these rudimentary hardware are sent out to lead graphics programmers of a studio so they can gauge what's possible. And depending on how far away a console is from release, these dev kits can take various forms. As an example, one dev received a proper PS4 dev kit 1 year before the console's November 2013 release, whereas another dev was working with what were essentially PCs dressed up as dev kits 1.5 to 2 years prior to PS4's launch. So while there might be PS5 dev kits out there right now, at this stage they probably look nothing like a proper home console, the hardware specs probably haven't been finalized, and even then, they're probably incredibly well hidden, with sources citing that with earlier PlayStations, they were asked to lock away dev kits in rooms that could only be accessed by a select group of people. With all said and done, the bottom line is that yes, PS5 is definitely in development, and yes, there might be some very early dev kits out there, but too few devs have seen or heard anything about it for the console to be anywhere near the stage where it's launching in the next couple of months, in less than a year. All signs seem to indicate that semi-accurate's $1,000 paywalled report may not be so accurate after all, and that we will probably have to wait until at least 2020 for the next generation of home consoles to begin. That's a long ways off, but at the same time, if you ask me, there is hardly a reason to rush this current generation, as there are still plenty of great games in the pipeline, and as there is still strong momentum in the sale of existing consoles. But that's just me. I'd love to hear when you expect PS5 to be released in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon. It is completely optional, but donating even as little as $1 a month will go a long way in helping maintain this channel. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out!